Hi and hello watch fans, and welcome to another audio article, or as we like to say, Audicle. In this series, I read aloud the words of our resident provocateur, David Boucher. Today's article is entitled, Too Thick or Not Too Thick? That is indeed the question in today's watch community. It seems to me that as soon as a new release is announced, it doesn't take much time for someone to comment, if this were a bit thinner, it would be an insta-buy. That is assuming someone doesn't beat them to it with the more direct assessment of, lol, nope, too thick. It wasn't always this way. When I first got really deep into watches in 2010, the industry was coming out of a super cycle in terms of both pricing and watch proportions. Back then, 47mm Panerais and Hublot King powers reigned, and it was a mark of pride to have a watch the size of a grapefruit on your wrist. As it always does, the pendulum swung the other way. The style world moved from the trashy trucker hats of the 2000s and the tailored suits of the Tumbler era, and horological tastes shifted towards smaller and smaller watches. During the transitional period, the width measurement was usually looked at first. Now, however, with smaller watches clearly preferred, at least in the enthusiast community, it seems that potential buyers are comfortable assuming that a watch will be within a certain, quite narrow band, so instead they go straight to a measurement that doesn't yet seem to have converged, the watch's thickness. In a previous article about Hublot, I wrote about zombie opinions, views that just stumble along despite being relatively easy to refute, and I think one of the most undead opinions out there is that a watch can categorically be too thick. Let's first focus on the term thickness, which has taken on negative connotations with regards to watches, but which the Oxford Dictionary simply defines as the size of something between opposite surfaces or sides. If I were to say that a watch has thickness, what I'm really saying is that it just has a non-zero measurement beyond height and width. The word thick is, by contrast, subjective. Turning again to Oxford's, the definition of thick is having a larger distance between opposite sides or surfaces than other similar objects or than normal. With that definition in mind, can a watch be thick or even too thick unless it's in relation to some specific situation? What in that definition constitutes normal? In this context, I like to bring up the example of the door to a bank vault. Does this door have thickness? Yes, in the sense that it's not a flat surface. Now, is it thick or even too thick? Well, that depends what it's being used for. If I wanted to repurpose this hypothetical bank vault door for my home, it may indeed be too thick for a lot of things. Looking proportional in the space, not impeding the other doors, or perhaps just weighing too much for the floor. Is it, however, too thick in an absolute sense? That depends on the design intent and its intended use. Consider this. If it were designed to resist a pry bar, but would-be robbers came in with dynamite, this thick bank vault door may in fact not be thick enough. Back to watches now. Can you really look at a watch's thickness measurement alone and proclaim it's too thick? Of course not. If you frequently wear fitted shirts and jackets, I can understand that a large dive chronograph might not be at the top of your list, but do you always wear fitted shirts and jackets? Personally, I'm pretty dressed down on weekends, and a dive chronograph doesn't sound too thick at all for a Sunday barbecue. It's overkill maybe, but not too thick. I had first-hand experience with this last year when I travelled to attend my first post-COVID conference. For peace of mind, I don't usually like to travel with more than the watch I leave the house with, and for this conference, I thought my Seiko King Turtle would make an ideal choice. It's robust, it looked cool on a NATO strap I'd just acquired, and, considering its size, it had always looked well proportioned in all previous wearing occasions. Long story short, I made a mistake and quickly discovered it was a huge pain in the ass trying to hide this watch under my suit, and overall it looked and felt really awkward. At that particular time, the Seiko Turtle was indeed too thick for what I was doing. Any other time, though, it's a great piece. The opposite happened a few years ago when I bought myself an Omega Planet Ocean 600M dive chronograph. Omega lists this watch's thickness at 19.3mm. I'm sure several of you out there are probably retching right now, but I never did and still don't pay that measurement any attention. The watch has a see-through caseback, 600 meters of water resistance, a coaxial escapement, and a chronograph. All of that functionality comes with extra millimeters, but all of that functionality is exactly what caused my primitive lizard brain to shoot off fireworks when I purchased it. I wear this watch in the summer, during which time I'm never in long sleeves, and the orange accents go perfectly with whatever I have on. So while this Omega has ample thickness, it is, for me, not too thick. Going back to that thickness-functionality trade-off, I think that if one reflexively dismisses a watch as too thick, they are at best not considering the full design intent of the watch, at worst putting down the hard work of designers and engineers for whom any given thickness was, in fact, a very deliberate choice. Play a game of word association with a watch geek about the original Tudor Black Bay 41 and the recently released Black Bay Pro, and thick is probably the first word that comes out of their mouths. How fair is that? A Rolex Explorer 2 has 100 meters of water resistance, whereas the Black Bay Pro has 200 meters of water resistance, and that doubling of the rating probably contributed to the latter's case thickness, or vice versa. If you proclaim the Black Bay Pro to be too thick, you're really saying that you don't need or care about 200 meters of water resistance. And maybe you don't, but someone else, myself included, could think differently. Plus, if you say that, can't you pull on that thread and convince yourself that wearing a mechanical watch, or any watch really, is unnecessary? That wouldn't be much fun at all, and watches are meant to be fun, occasionally even overbuilt and over the top, which is part of the fun. In the case of the original Black Bay 41, maybe Rolex just didn't want anything that competed too directly with the Submariner at the time. And you know what? If that was the reasoning, then the Black Bay 41 was not too thick, but rather exactly as intended. If you did find that watch too thick, it was too thick for you, but I hope you didn't reach this conclusion until after you tried one on at an AD. Over the last few years, I've had more fun in watches than I ever have before because I've made a sincere effort not to dismiss watches outright for any reason. At the risk of sounding like some stoned freshman in a college dorm at midnight, a watch is not too thick, too thin, too heavy, or too anything. A watch just is. And if a watch doesn't suit you, well, it doesn't suit you, and that's it. Everyone else should feel free to make their own independent choice as well. While I don't personally wish to return to a time when watch companies only released 50mm grapefruits, I don't want to be heading into a time when watch companies are only releasing 38mm grapes either. Give me the whole fruit salad, and let's all be grateful to have so much colour, freshness, and taste in front of us.